up, guys? Reborn podcast. My name is Ashley Horner. I'm here with my co-host, Miss Elena Del Rey. Today we have a very awesome guest on. If you have not heard of this podcast, I'm assuming if you're listening to the podcast, maybe you're then you know Rich Roll. I actually used to listen to him. I'm not a big, I don't really listen to music when I run because I really like to just think about things. But sometimes I'll turn on a podcast and I'll listen to a podcast. And he's one of the podcasts that I would listen to. It's actually been a while since I've listened to his podcast, but I've never, he is such an awesome human being. And I'm really looking forward to, getting to know him today and hearing more about his story today.
So he's an author. Mm-hmm. He's a marathon ultra runner.
Ultra.
This man, brief overview of his story. He had addiction problems. He was overweight, and he did a whole 360. This man became a vegan. He started running, and 2 years into his fitness journey, he did an ultra marathon, which lasts 3 days. He ran 2 marathons in one day. So it was 52 miles, I think. He swam and he cycled.
I wonder if he did anything leading up to his ultras or if he just went straight from he trained. I guess he trained for a couple years going up to his ultra. But yeah, just the mental fortitude this human has.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. I'm really excited to...
He's been podcasting for a while, too.
He has, yeah. Definitely, if you haven't looked up Rich Roll or downloaded his podcast, do that. Very inspiring.
I say let's just jump right into it and let's welcome Mr. Roll.
All right. We want to welcome on Rich Roll today. You guys are in for a great show and an interview with him. All right, Rich, thank you for joining me today on the Reborn podcast. And you have such an incredible story. I just want to say that it's truly an honor to have you on here today with Lena and I. And thank you so much for carving out some time for us to kind of pick your brain, the guru that you are, and all of your accomplishments that you have had. And you're writing a new book, or you wrote a new book, because I saw you were signing lots of books.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
First of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to
Thanks for being here again.
So, thanks so much. I'm on the precipice of releasing my next book. It's called Voicing Change. Comes in this really cool box here. I can show it to you.
Exclusive.
In a second. But basically, I've been on this podcast journey for coming up on 8 years at this point and have interviewed over 550 people. It's been an extraordinary journey for myself, as I'm sure you guys can attest. It gives you this amazing, unprecedented opportunity to kind of hijack all the people that inspire you and force them to answer all your questions. And, I learned a thing or two along the way from all of these people. And I really wanted to kind of honor the guests that have given me their time, and also honor the audience that I've built by putting together, kind of a printed compendium of some of my favorite episodes, and do it in kind of a coffee table book version, so you can open it up to any page. I've profiled 50 guests that I've had over the years. We excerpted some of the more impactful things that they had to share, and it's interlaced with essays that some of the guests contributed, and of course, my thoughts, and we have beautiful photographs of everybody. So it's a really gorgeous book that I think anybody would feel good about leaving out on their coffee table, and of course makes for a great
super
gift.
exciting.
And really, it's just
congratulations.
Thanks. It's a gift for the fans, first and foremost.
That's awesome. That's not your first book, right?
No. So this is what the cover looks like.
You were a New York's bestseller, if I'm right.
So my first book was called Finding Ultra, and it was a memoir, kind of my story, through childhood and all my trials and tribulations, my story of addiction and recovery, and then kind of midlife malaise and changing my relationship to mind, body, and soul, and how I discovered ultra endurance events, and really kind of found myself through the experience of training and competing in these events and some of the things I learned along the way. And then subsequent to that, my wife and I put out a couple cookbooks, The Plant Power Way, The Plant Power Way Italia. And she has a vegan cheese book called This Cheese is Nuts that she put out. And she has her own vegan cheese line. So, yeah, a number of books over the years. But it's been a while since I put a book out. So I'm really excited about this one, which is we're self-publishing this one. So it's a different kind of experience to create it yourself and own and control it.
So where can people find this book? Sorry, Lena.
No, you're good. I was just asking the same question. When is this book going to be released?
We're taking pre-orders now, and we're shipping globally, and we're going to start shipping on November 10th. So November 10th is the official pub date, but we've already, got tons of orders, and we're going to be mailing out lots of them very soon.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit about your journey, like leading up to, whenever you started realizing that your life and the transformation, like you had to make a change. And I think it's different for individuals. Like whenever they realize that they need to transform their own life, either they go through something physically, like health related, there's something in their life that they have to change, but there's always a reason why someone takes that first step. And you took an incredible step and not only changed your life and the path that you were on, but you have some seriously badass accomplishments that you have made. Can you tell us like a little bit about that and like what you did and why, like your purpose?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was an athlete as a young person. I was a swimmer. I competed at Stanford University in the late 1980s. At the time, that was the number one collegiate swimming program in the country. Although I was very much a bench warmer, I was never a star. I'm not the most talented athlete. I can't hit a ball or shoot a basket to save my life, but I'm pretty good at suffering. And swimming is a pretty good avenue for exploring suffering. And I did okay in that sport, but alcoholism really derailed my potential. When I got to college, it became all about partying, and that was an adventure that I went on for 15 years until it really left me a broken shell of a human being. And it's a long story, but there's a lot of wreckage that I created as a result of my drinking career. At 31, I had that moment of clarity, that bottom that you hear about with recovering alcoholics. Realized I just couldn't live this way any longer, and I'd alienated all my friends and family. I was on the precipice of, being unemployable, and had lost the trust and, the friendship of most of the good people in my life. And with nowhere to turn, I found myself in a treatment center in rural Oregon, which I made my home for 100 days, which is kind of a long time to go to rehab, longer than most people. And that experience saved my life, and it really cemented in me the power that we all have to change, like how simple decisions like that day that I woke up hungover and decided like no longer
Is enough.
really altered forever the trajectory of my life. And I really credit everything that I have now to that decision that I made. But growth isn't a binary static thing. Like I was able to get sober and maintain my sobriety and really make my recovery journey my number one priority. But for the next 10 years after I got out of rehab, I was so intent on repairing all the wreckage that I'd created that I was unaware how much I was transferring my addictive tendencies onto work. For example, I became a workaholic, and how I was using food to medicate my emotional state. I just became like a workaholic, junk food junkie. And what's kind of challenging about it is that I was successful because I really did repair all of these things and became kind of an upstanding citizen once again. But at the same time, I was blind to how I was killing myself physically. So by the time I was 39, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was just a lazy couch potato working 60 to 80-hour weeks, crashing every night in front of the TV with a bag of cheeseburgers that I picked up on the way home. And, I had a second kind of come to Jesus moment, a second, moment of clarity when I was walking up the stairs to my bedroom and had to take a break. Like I had to pause a simple flight of stairs was just too much for me. I was winded, out of breath. I had tightness in my chest. Heart disease runs in my family. My grandfather, who had been a champion swimmer in the late 1920s, died of a heart attack at age 54. And I had this like moment where I realized, like, if I don't change how I'm living, like, I'm very much headed in this guy's direction, and probably it's going to happen a lot sooner because there weren't as many McDonald's back in his day.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you think that you're on this path of like sobriety and no alcohol and the drugs? Do you have moments where you feel like that you want to go back to that place because even of like maybe the stress that you feel? I know that now you do like a lot of meditation, which would be very interesting to like touch on that. But I think like, I guess like looking at my life and the fitness that I do and like even the endurance stuff that I do, which is nowhere like near the things that you have done, that is kind of like my drug because it's like the grit and the dark. Like you have to be able to get super dark and deep and gritty whenever you go through these ultra events. But I'm just wondering, like, do you ever have times where you feel like that you just like, especially during COVID, like, did you have times or do you ever have times or experience where you've just kind of wanted to relapse back into the old rich?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It goes back to my earlier point about nothing being static or binary. Like people say to me, "Oh, you overcame your alcoholism." It's like, for today, this is something that I have to work on. Yeah, it's like a daily practice. And if I'm not militant or diligent about using the tools that I've learned in the program of recovery, a relapse is inevitable. Like every single decision that I make, every encounter that I have, every thought that I entertain, every interaction that I have with another human being is either moving me towards a drink or away from a drink. And the more I can remember that and be present with that, it makes me more conscious and mindful of the decisions that I'm making to make sure that I stay on track. And I think, to your point, sports, suffering, physical activities, things that are hard, are one of the tools in my toolbox. But I have made the mistake in the past of thinking, well, the solution to my alcoholism is just my training. Like that's my tool. And when I'm out, really pushing it, I don't have to worry about all the other, 12 steps. I can just do this thing. And after 13 years of sobriety, I did relapse. Like I had, one day where I picked up a drink, and luckily I made it back to an AA meeting that night and got back on the wagon. But it was a very powerful reminder of just how baffling the disease of alcoholism can be. And it was kind of it right-sized my ego, because I thought not that I had it licked or that I ever questioned whether I was an alcoholic, but it just reminded me that like I am powerless over alcohol and there are these things that I have to do every single day. The training is part of it.
Do you think that going through these feats of all of the ultra events that you have done, and I would like for you to touch on that after this question, but do you think and I know like the mental fortitude it takes to go through these events and the ultra events of like when everything, it's a big mental battle, I think, more than anything, because physically it's like whatever, your body hurts. And then the next 5 minutes, maybe something else hurts. It's like this big mental battle, like within yourself. But do you think that because of the mental feats that you have accomplished, do you believe that's helped you fight the sobriety and to stay true to your path?
Yeah, it's been helpful, but I don't think it's a replacement for some of the other things that I have to do that are specifically 12-step oriented. And the mistake that you make is when you think like, that's your entire solution. It's one aspect of the solution. And certainly endurance sports have been one of my greatest teachers. When I kind of went on this journey at the outset, I was also having a bit of an existential crisis. I was a practicing attorney. I hated being a lawyer, but I didn't know what else to do or how to find my calling. I'd never really asked myself, like, what is it that is unique to me? Like, what would make me happy? Like, what do I want to pursue or express in my life? And all the time spent alone training for these races was really kind of this spiritual journey of trying to reconnect with my own, innate humanity and weakness so that I could become a more self-actualized, integrated human being. And I think getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that are hard and pushing yourself and realizing that you have this unbelievable reservoir of potential and capacity that you've never really tapped into is a very self-affirming act. And it helps you develop the self-esteem that I think is essential in becoming that self-actualized person, which of course will in turn be a buffer against your darker nature, whether that's addiction or how you interact with other people. Like, addiction is a spectrum. Like, if you like to check out by watching too much television or playing video games or shopping or whatever it is, you become more innately aware of those triggers and the things that are moving you away from your highest self. And these incredibly difficult ultra endurance races really, when you meet yourself on the trail and you're depleted and exhausted, you can't lie to yourself. Like, it strips away the denial and you become more objectively aware of who you actually are.
How did you get involved in, like, how did you choose to say, like, oh, I'm going to start doing triathlons. I'm going to get involved in these ultrathon marathon. Like, what was what piqued your interest in doing these events?
Yeah. So I turned 40 and I changed my relationship to food, and suddenly I just felt better in my body. Like, I had all this energy and I just pulled it.
Correct.
What's that?
You're vegan.
Yeah. So I went plant-based at 40, and I suddenly felt really good, and I couldn't stop tapping my foot. Like, that's how much energy, I hadn't done anything, but suddenly I was like, I'm literally vibrating. I gotta go outside. My wife was like, will you please leave me alone and go burn off some energy because you're driving me fucking crazy. So I just went out, and started jogging a little bit. I went back to the pool for the first time in a long time. My wife bought me a bike for my birthday, and it was all very casual. Like, I was just enjoying the process of reconnecting with my physical self. And it was a reminder, I loved swimming, and I was sort of reconnecting with this childlike, joy that I hadn't experienced in a long time. And I had no desire or designs on becoming a competitive athlete again. It was really just, a kind of a dad thing. But I came across this article in a magazine, and this is way back in 2007, probably. And it was an article about this race called Ultraman. I always thought Iron Man is the
I've heard
pinnacle
of the
of
Iron
human
Mans.
endurance. And this article was about this triathlon that was twice the distance of Ironman. It was a 3-day double Ironman distance race that circumnavigates the entire big island of Hawaii. And the protagonist in this article was this guy called David Goggins that I'd never heard of, who had just ran the Badwater 135 and had done quite well, and showed up a couple weeks later in Hawaii having not been a triathlete, having, not much history as an endurance athlete whatsoever. He'd been a power lifter and a big football player type guy. And he was able to not only complete this race, but I think he ended up second. And I just found that so inspiring. Everybody knows who David Goggins is now. He's become this mainstream cult figure. But at the time, he was a legend and a hero in endurance circles, but hardly anybody that, everybody knows him to be now. And that was this spark that lit a fire in me. And the way that this race was described, it didn't sound like a race. It sounded more like this spiritual odyssey. And as a confused person trying to figure out who I wanted to be, it just seemed like this template for undertaking that exploration. And something clicked in me, and I was like, I got to do this race. I hadn't done an Ironman. I hadn't done a half Ironman. I didn't have any business even entertaining the prospect of doing something like this, but I just couldn't shake it, and I just became determined to line up at the starting line to do that race. And it's a longer story, but that's kind of what happened. And I think on top of that, just to complete the answer, I had unfinished business as a swimmer. Alcoholism really took me out of the game, and I never really felt like I achieved my potential as an athlete. And the idea of trying to recapture some of that in my 40s was very appealing to me.
So this became your spiritual goal. This was your goal, that I was this is how I'm going to reconnect with my mind, body, soul. It's going to help my journey of sobriety and really reconnect with my true self.
100%. Yeah, it wasn't about, athleticism or anything, or beating anyone
about
or anything
you.
like that. It was like it was an opportunity for self-discovery.
That's awesome. So how did this process go? Because the Ultraman that you compete in, only 35 participants, and you have to be invited, correct?
So it's a 320-mile double Ironman triathlon, and it's limited to just 30 plus people every single year that are hand selected and invited. So I just plied my lawyerly skills and called up the race director. When I couldn't shake this, inspiration that I had, I was like, I couldn't sleep. So I was like, I just need to call the woman who's the race director, and she can tell me I'm insane. And then, at least that door will get shut and I can move on with my life. But I had a conversation with her. I said, I'm intrigued by this race. I'd really, like to be able to participate. She's like, what have you done? And I said, nothing, but if you let me in, I will do everything in my power to be ready. And she didn't give me the green light. She didn't say, yes, you're in, but she said, okay, well, why don't you call me in a couple months and let me know where you're at. And it was just like that sliver of hope that she gave me that was enough to motivate me. And I just basically assumed I was going to find my way in. So I hired a coach and got to work and, did everything in my power to prepare for this race. And ultimately she relented and let me in. God knows why. The race has become more popular in recent years. I don't know that, such a maneuver would be possible these days, but, that permission that she gave me literally changed my life.
So 2 questions. What has been to date the hardest physical feat that you've challenged yourself to? And then I kind of want to know, like, what is it that keeps you going whenever you're on mile freaking 50 and you have so many more miles in front of you? What is it? Like, what is that tick inside of you that just pushes you, regardless of the pain, the physical pain, and that the mentality of just, because at any moment you can quit. We can all quit. There's always an exit sign.
Yeah. So, well, to answer the first part of the question, the hardest thing I did was in 2010, a buddy of mine, Jason Lester, and I did this thing that he came up with, that he created, called Epic 5, where we did an Ironman a day on all the 5 Hawaiian islands. Called it, 5 Ironmans, 5 Hawaiian islands, 5 days. And it was this crazy adventure that we, basically, tried to accomplish with duct tape and a couple friends to help us out. And it was, it was insane and so difficult. Like the 4th day just broke me, and the fact that we were able to get through it and accomplish it, it was just an experience of a lifetime. Like I really met my maker. And I think, in terms of the second part of your question, how do you keep going when your back is up against the wall or you feel depleted? I've just learned over time, like we are all so much more capable than we allow ourselves to believe. And what motivates me is finding that edge and seeing if I can push past it. And the way that you accomplish that, as unromantic as it sounds, is you have to be completely present in what you're doing. So when you're on mile 50 of your whatever long run and you think you can't take one more step, you have to break these things down into the tiniest chunks and say, I'll quit, but only after I get to that lamppost. Like I'm just going to get to there, and that's my only focus. Just, 100 more yards, and then I'll reassess. And then you do that, and you're like, wow, I did that. I thought I had to stop, but I didn't need to. Well, now I'm here. What's the next goal? I make it another 100 meters. And the more you can just anchor yourself in the immediacy of what you're trying to accomplish and break it down into the tiniest of pieces, that's the way I think anybody accomplishes anything. And there's just such a thrill and a satisfaction that you get when you're able to push past that perceived boundary and get to the other side of it. And being a good alcoholic, I'm probably addicted to that on some level, and that's part of the engine.
So out of everyone that you've had on your podcast, is is there anyone that has really just stood out to you that that I don't know, like that you feel like has given you the best piece of wisdom, or and it's probably in your book, right? But what has been maybe something that, you know, through your journey and accomplishing these physical feats and transforming yourself from your lifestyle that you had to becoming who you are now? What is something or someone that has had an influence in your life that has had an impact on who you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're forcing me to choose amongst my babies, which I'm reluctant to do because I love them all so much. You know, I think one of the cool experiences that I've had. I mean, you know, the show's grown to a certain point where suddenly now I'm able to like have conversations with people like Matthew McConaughey and Edward Norton
Saw
and like
that.
Russell
I was
Brand,
a
and
little
like
jealous.
it's super fun to like talk to these, you know, icons of culture. But I think what's most gratifying are finding people that have incredible stories that no one's ever heard of. Like these are just, you know, relatively anonymous people who have faced and overcome obstacles anonymously. And, you know, being able to put a microphone in front of a person like that and give them an opportunity to share to a very large number of people, you know, what they've learned is incredibly gratifying and also incredibly powerful, because those people tend to be the most genuine and relatable. Like they're not coming from a place of artifice. They're not trying to sell a book. They're not trying to become famous. They just have an incredible story. So one example would be a guy called Josh LaJohny who lives in southern Louisiana, like a true, you know, bayou guy. Like there's no Whole Foods, and everybody in his family was extremely overweight, and he was pushing like over 400 pounds. And he just decided like he didn't want to live that way, and he had to kind of buck family tradition and, you know, reconfigure his relationship with his body and with food and with movement and all of these things, and ultimately not only dropped like 250 pounds, but became this ultra runner. He actually won an ultra running race and has become an inspiration to a lot of people. He has a very kind of just such a beautiful, genuine, authentic voice. And being able to kind of amplify a guy like that is personally very gratifying. And I think another guy would be John Mcavoy, who's a guy who I discovered lives in England, grew up in East London in a gangster family, became a bank robber when he was a teenager, was making bank and like, you know, partying in Ibiza and like, you know, just like so cinematic, like right out of a movie, and gets busted and ends up with a life sentence. He's in solitary confinement, and he ends up just basically doing push-ups all day, and got permission to use a rowing machine in the gym in his prison, and ends up breaking world records for indoor rowing while he's in prison, and ultimately gets a parole hearing and tells the parole officer he wants to be a professional triathlete. They laugh at him, but nonetheless, they grant him parole, and he becomes just that. And he ends up becoming the only Nike-sponsored Ironman athlete, and now he's this incredible advocate for prison reform and, you know, having fitness programs in prison. He testifies before Parliament. He's become this incredibly inspirational figure, and he, to me, is like an icon of just utter, unbelievable transformation. How you can take the worst of circumstances and transform that into not only an opportunity for personal growth, but to become this beacon of inspiration to people all around the world. And it reminds me that no matter how far down you have fallen, no matter how dark and dire things are, that there is always hope. And that change resides within yourself, and it begins with very simple decisions and very tiny acts that are strung together over time that ultimately move mountains. And I just find that so inspirational. So when I'm having a lack of motivation, or I feel like I can't get out of bed, or, you know, tackle this obstacle that I'm facing, I'm reminded of these, you know, unbelievable individuals who faced and overcome obstacles far more severe than anything that I've encountered.
Yeah, that's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So next weekend, in like 5 days, I'm doing a 40-hour run for an orphanage that I've been supporting for years over in Haiti. What advice would you give me for running and like prepping the days leading up to that run?
Wow. So what's your longest run to date then?
I did 230 miles through Haiti like 3 years ago. It took me 3 days though. This is a 40 hours straight.
Right.
And she doesn't want to sleep. She's not sleeping in this race or taking breaks.
I love it.
Like she didn't want to do that.
That's unbelievable. That's so cool. Well, I don't know that. I mean, look, if you've run over 200 miles yourself, then it's in you. You already know what to do. You don't need anybody else to tell you how to get through something like that because you have faced and overcome the kind of difficulties that you're going to encounter. And you already know that. So the answers reside within yourself. The only advice that I could give to you, and also bear in mind, this is advice from somebody who's never run 40 hours straight. So it's not coming from direct experience, only somebody who has a small taste of ultra endurance. But my suggestion would be to find the joy in it. Like, how can you milk the most out of this experience and do it with a smile on your face? And the more you can like live in that place of gratitude, like how unbelievably amazing is it that I get to do this incredible thing and do it, to honor the people of Haiti. It's a gift, and you're going to meet the razor's edge in a way that almost no human beings on the planet get to do. And that also is an unbelievable gift. So constantly reminding yourself of this privilege that you have, I think, when I'm able to do that, it gives me kind of another gear or, a deeper reservoir of strength to push through.
So if you had the option to run for 40 hours around the track, knowing that you're going to get to a point where like the mental just like firing chambers in your brain will probably start to depreciate, or would you run a path? So originally I was actually supposed to do this run in Haiti. I've ran there before. I've done it. I know the terrain, but because of COVID and everything that we're in, I'm doing it here in my hometown in Virginia Beach, and coming down with like just logistics, which I honestly, where I could run wherever. I could run on the street or I could go to a track. I'm just wondering if you were doing a 40-hour run straight, and my goal is, I've done some ultra endurance things. I rode on a concept rower for 25 hours straight with no sleep. This is obviously a little bit bigger, running for 40 hours straight, and that's my goal. Would you find yourself at a track, or would you have a course like throughout, like the town? What would you do?
I think personally, for me, if you have the logistical support and ability to do it, doing a point-to-point would be what I would opt for, because, every time you go around the track, when you get to where you started, you're going to see that cooler and that chair and, your friends, and it just makes it easier to pull the plug, knowing that's there. And there's something about doing a point-to-point where it becomes harder to pull that plug and pull that ripcord because you haven't arrived at your destination yet.
Yeah,
so if
you
you
have
can
a
get
goal.
the logistics,
You're going
you
somewhere and you're
pick an endpoint. You're going in one direction the whole way, and you're not going to stop until you get there. I think there's something about that, at least, and this is just me personally, that makes it a little bit more interesting and exciting. And look, it's less boring, of course, because you're not going around in circles all day, which can drive you mad. But if you were on a rowing machine for 25 hours, then you're no stranger to that, and maybe you're more wired for that. I think it's a personal thing.
So let's say somebody's listening to this and they're maybe not ready for an ultra endurance event. Maybe they want to run their first half marathon, first marathon. They're new to running, but maybe they've started running during COVID, and now that races and stuff are starting to open up, and they're like, oh, I'm really intimidated to do a marathon or a half marathon. but I want to do it. What is like some advice that you would give somebody to step out and to be brave and to do that?
I think to stop intellectualizing it and stop overthinking it and just do it. We tend to make these things so much more complicated than they need to be. And what happens is you then live in this place of analysis paralysis where, I want to do a half marathon, but you'll spend 2 weeks researching shoes or like which GPS watch to get. And these are all like, mental distractions that just prevent you from doing the thing. Everybody's got a pair of shoes and everybody's got a road out in front of their house or their apartment. So, the first thing to do is put one foot in front of the other. And if you've never done any running before, go out and run around the block or walk around the block. Do what you can do. And then just try to build on that. And I think the more you're in action, the more you create momentum, and all the questions that you have about like, how am I going to do a half marathon or how am I going to do a 10? Those get answered in time, but they get answered in the process of the doing. They don't get answered by intellectualizing them, looking at a screen in your computer. So I think it's about like there's a little bit of like a letting go, like whatever need you have to know the answers to all these things, and just get used to or acclimated to the process of moving. And awesome. I think when you can do that, like I think people tend to surprise themselves with what they're capable of.
So are you going to do another ultra marathon anytime soon in the future, maybe?
I'd love to. I haven't done an ultra in a couple of years. The last thing I did was the swim run world championships in Sweden a couple of years ago. I'd like to do more swim runs. It's always, it's a balancing act. I mean, if you I'm so, again, back to my alcoholism, like if I want to do these races, I have to be like all in. It's very difficult for me to kind of casually show up at the starting line for something like this, knowing that I could have prepared better. And that means that you have to live this unsustainable lifestyle if you want to train that much. And as somebody who's running this podcast and putting this book out, and I got 4 kids and trying to help all of them navigate COVID, it's like, what is most important? And I don't, the questions that I needed answered for myself have been answered, and that doesn't mean that there isn't plenty of growth to come or that I still need to, endure for myself. But it's about picking the moment. So like every couple of years, I try to find something hard that excites me, and I'm sure I'll do that again soon. But I haven't. There's nothing specific right now that I'm training for other than just being fit for life.
Awesome. Hey, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Mm-hmm. So where can people find you and follow you? We have Instagram, we have Facebook. Are you on Twitter? Are you on TikTok?
I'm not on. Well, I'm on TikTok, but I've never posted to TikTok. I do it mainly to stalk my daughters and make sure that they're behaving themselves. But
being a good dad, just checking up on them.
I'm at Rich Roll everywhere. At Rich Roll, I'm pretty active on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. My website's richroll.com, and there you can find all about the new book and the podcast, the Rich Roll podcast on Apple and all the places you listen to podcasts, and also on YouTube as well.
That was a really great podcast. I got some good advice coming up for my run this weekend. I kind of already have it in my mind, like what I'm going to do. And what I have learned with these like long ultra events or like the long rows that I do is that you can really overthink something, which is one of the takeaways that I took today from Rich Roll. And I think it just kind of, you just get it in your mind that you're going to do it, and the joy that you have in the suffering and the fact that you're able to do something, and just how awesome that is to be in that state and to be in a place that you're able to do something and for the greater good. So I'm looking forward to this weekend, even though this podcast will probably come out after I'm done. So hopefully I survive. And my goal is to stay awake for 40 hours moving. I don't know if I'll be able to run like straight through, but I want to put one foot in front of the other for 40 hours straight, unless I'm like squatting in the woods.
Well,
somewhere.
I'll be sending you good vibes your way.
Yeah, I'm going to run by the brew window. I'm going to be like, cinnamon roll, Liz.
I will throw it like a frisbee in your
Yeah,
mouth.
I'm gonna catch it like a dog.
Well, a lot of people are behind you on this, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks. That means a lot.
So we have a few questions.
Okay.
Again, it's favorite time of the day
Yeah,
or
I
favorite
don't
time
know
of the
these
podcast.
questions, so.
It's question time. I didn't know this, but someone asked, "Why don't you wear socks when training, or do you?" Do you wear socks?
No, I don't. So I think like in the wintertime, like maybe when my feet, because I actually like to run in really thin shoes, low profile shoes. I'll put on socks, but my true honest reason is because I can never find a fucking pair of matching socks in my house.
Do you know I hate wearing socks too?
Do you? So I don't.
I'm
Like,
not even wearing socks
I don't have
right
socks.
now.
I don't have socks on right now in my boots.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
the
I
exact.
don't-
I feel like socks, like, get in my way. I feel like I'm wearing
Yeah.
burlap sacks on my feet, and I fucking hate it.
Yeah, and then
I
it just
hate
kind of.
it.
I like the feeling, especially whenever I'm running.
Freedom.
I like that
Your toes in
feeling.
the grass.
Which is another reason why I like minimal shoes. Is I just like to feel like the earth beneath me. I guess is a way to say it.
That's
So.
hilarious.
But I don't know why I'm
glad
not
I
wearing
met
socks.
someone else who hates socks or just doesn't
Yeah,
wear socks. Like
actually,
I do.
people ask me that pretty often. Like, why don't I? And no, I don't get blisters, but I'm very
Do your
selective.
feet stink?
No, not really.
Same.
I have a pair of shoes that I wore through the ocean and like they stayed out in the rain and those like kind of reek, but I don't know. Like I love it. I'm very selective on the type of shoes that I wear because I have worn shoes that have given me blisters. But for the most part, it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody, you know, like you just not everybody
makes
needs to
you
be a
comfortable.
vegan. If
Yeah.
it works for you, it works for you. If for some
makes
reason,
you
like,
happy.
socks don't work for me.
Yeah.
I just don't wear them.
I'm right there with you.
I don't wear them.
Okay, we got another question. This one gets a little deeper. So this listener is she wants to know about postpartum exercising. She said she wants to know what you did when you were postpartum with your boys, and she wants to know, is there any hope for us moms who still want to beast it out and be the best our body can be, you know, after having a child?
So I remember whenever I got pregnant with my last son, and I've had C-sections with all three of my boys. I remember very, very vividly whenever I took off on my first, I wanted to go run a mile after Otto was born.
Wait, like right after?
No, I had
Or-
to have been pretty much cleared. It was probably like 4 to 6 weeks afterward.
Okay.
I got cleared early from my C-section. I went and saw the doctor because I wanted to go snowboarding. And so the doctor was like, And I was like, look, I'll be fine. Anyways, I ended up getting cleared earlier. But I remember when I went to go run for my first mile after my C-section. And it was painful like mentally. Like it definitely crushed my soul and my just the mental part of running because I used to be able to go out and run so easily.
Did you run when you were pregnant?
It was really uncomfortable. I get really big when I'm pregnant. Like my belly sticks out super far. I would try to run a little bit, but it was just like uncomfortable. Some people can run throughout the pregnancy. I just carry low, and maybe it's because I have boys. I'm not sure, but
It's the old wives' tale.
yeah, and I would just say for moms, and this is such a great question, and I could honestly spend an entire podcast talking about postpartum and training, but you have to give yourself enough time, and you have to realize the changes that your body has gone through. I think we are creatures we want everything to happen so quick. We want to snap back into shape so quick, and you have to understand that it took you. First of all, you made a human in your body, which is absolutely incredible. It took you 9
That's
months.
literally insane if you think
It
about it.
is. If you think about it,
You're like, you're growing an eyeball
Yeah.
on one
right.
day.
And your body only
Or a
did that in
toe.
9 months. Like, that's insane. So you have to give yourself enough time to slow down, to be in the moment. And the best advice that I can give you is to just move and to be active. I remember, once I started feeling better, I would stick my little boy Otto in the Bjorn, and I'd be like, okay, today I'm going to do 100 walking lunges with him in the Bjorn. You're not leaving him, your baby, like they're right there. They love to be in the Bjorn, and the next day it was 200, and then maybe I did some body weight squats. So don't overthink it. Start small and just think about moving and being active, and give yourself at least 9 months. At least 9 months.
To bounce back. Can we, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this, but I think this is hilarious. We were just talking about like mom and like working out. You're wearing a hat
Oh,
right
gosh.
now that says MILF University.
So Lena got me this hat.
I did.
And I was like, Lena, what's a MIF? MIF? Lena was like,
it's a MILF.
a MILF. She had to explain to me.
MILF.
She's like, it's a
It's a mother
one.
I like to be friends with.
Oh, okay, good.
That's what
Yeah, all the PG listeners out there. Yeah, this is my hat. Yeah, MILF.
MILF
Repping
University.
it. Repping it well.
All right, last question of the day. Do you think that supplements are absolutely necessary when training? And if so, which ones do you recommend?
I do, but at the same time, if you don't have your recovery right, your nutrition right, the supplements they're gonna do jack shit. So you can have a freaking kick-ass workout and you can have the best supplements on the market, but if you leave in the 23 hours of the rest of your day, you're like eating shit and not taking care of yourself.
What's the fucking point?
There's no point.
Yeah.
So I would say the best, in my opinion, the best supplement that you can give yourself is a recovery supplement. But again, it comes down, before you should even have any business taking supplements, you have to get your diet right, period. Or it does no good. You're literally just wasting money. I'll take your money and I'll tell you how to freaking program your own diet.
Yeah.
And that'll do more good than any supplement will ever do.
Good to know. So do you take a specific supplement or?
Well, since you asked,
Since I asked.
I have been wanting to create my own supplement line for a really long time, like since back in 2016, I believe. I've been wanting and had the aspirations to create my very own line. So for a while, I was actually working on a powdered supplement, like a protein.
That's when I first met you. When I first met you is when you started working on that.
I was doing everything from the samples. I was going through flavors. I was actually just getting ready to sign off on the paperwork to send it in. And there's things like there was something missing. It didn't feel right. I can't tell you exactly what it was that I didn't pull the trigger on, because whenever things are right and I know that they're right,
you had a gut feeling.
I'm very quick and I'm very aggressive on pulling the trigger, and I make shit happen. So I pushed pause. I wanted to like rethink and revisit. And the reason why, thinking about like my brand and the things that I encompass is it's not just fitness. I very much live in the fitness industry, and I want to give everybody the gift of health and wellness. I think that is the most important gift that you can give anybody.
I heard a quote the other day, this not even a quote. This is what my mom always says: if you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck does that mean, Mom? And I was like, what? And growing
Mom
up now,
dropping down the
I know Mom was
facts,
dropping facts,
truth bombs
from early, and I was like, I didn't get that, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
If I didn't have my health, I literally could not do anything, especially right now in COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, unfortunately, for all those people who have lost someone out there, I am so sorry, and I feel for you, and it's just, if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
So take control of that. Start today.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue on. Go ahead.
No, I mean,
Mom
that's so
facts.
true. So I had this moment, and everything happens for a reason. I had this moment in my house where, and kind of going back to the sock thing where I couldn't find him. Everybody's gonna think I have the most unorganized
Cinderella
house
sock, yeah.
ever. But, I was trying to find the top to my shaker bottle because I wanted to mix like a recovery drink or a hydration drink I don't even remember what I was looking for. And I was so frustrated because I couldn't find the top to my freaking shaker bottle. And my dog ate the other top.
Was
that
it
I had.
Raven?
It was Raven, yes. Bless her. Thank you, Raven. And then all of a sudden I was just like, man, if I just had something that was like, and with my lifestyle, because I'm so busy, that was already there for me, already made, that I didn't have to have a bottle. I didn't have to have a shaker. I didn't have to get the water, whatever you want to put in it. So I've actually decided to go with RTDs, ready to drink drinks. And I have been working with a company here to help me with the cans and the labeling and the branding.
So you're going to have your own line now.
I am going to have my own line, but they're going to be RTDs, ready to drinks. And they'll
So you can
be
just
direct to
buy 'em,
consumer.
yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm wanting to do a pre I'm working on like an intra, but I want it to be like a drink that I can also take in the afternoon, even if I'm not working out and I just need to pick me up from like business and the kids.
Yeah.
And then I think recovery is really important. So it's going to be like a recovery, but I want to branch off into that. I want American Brew to have its own coffee whiskey drink. I want to do like possibly like a nitro cold brew in a can. It's honestly endless. And like whenever I was so frustrated because I couldn't find my shaker bottle, I was like, and
Your
that
aha
was the
moment.
answer. Yeah. Yeah. So we've been working on that for a couple months.
That's exciting. So for the listeners who have stuck with us
Yep.
to the end of it, this is your sneak peek. This is your preview.
Yes.
For Ashley's new line.
I'm not
going
to say the name. I'm not going to say the name yet.
Do you
but
have a name picked
I do.
out?
I have a
Okay.
name. We went through logos and like labeling and everything. So now it's just getting the formulations down and testing it. But
Are we going to have different flavor options?
yeah, different flavor
Okay.
options. And I'm really wanting to work on like the packaging of it, like whenever, because it's going to be direct to consumer, especially at first, and then I'm wanting to have it in Walgreens, supermarkets, like everywhere across the U.S. Eventually,
Ash
that's
is
like
going
step
global.
That's step B. But I want the packaging to be awesome. So really working on that. Like it's been awesome. Like I love the creative part of all businesses. That's like where I just can just go crazy.
Yeah.
Because really, there's no wrong answer when it comes to the creativity of a business and the things that you want to kind of make up in your mind, and then from then it's just like making it happen, making it become real life. So. Yeah, I'm not going to say the name or the logo.
Well,
so
just
it's
keep
awesome.
listening out.
But it had
to
the
Ashley.
name. The name has something to do. It's not.
Oh, are you going to give us a little hint?
I will. So I
Okay.
created Women of Iron, right?
Right.
It's Women of Iron is going to be a specialty line out of the drink. It's going to be a women's specific drink within the RTDs, but it's not going to be the name of my supplement company. But the name of the company, it has to do with someone or something in my life, and no, it's not blue.
All right.
So,
Send us what you think it's going to be.
but I haven't talked about this yet. So if you're listening to the podcast, you're the
This
first to
is a
know.
Reborn exclusive.
Reborn exclusive. yeah.
Ashley Horner is coming out
Yeah.
with an RTD.
And
line.
something else. A
and
Reborn
something
exclusive.
else.
Yeah, I've started training for the tactical games.
What's that?
So it's basically fitness and
Is this like the
competition
X
shooting.
game? Shooting.
Competition
Okay.
shooting and basically like CrossFit. If they had a baby, that's what it is. So
Is that like the thing in the Olympics? Have you seen like the
It's not-
women that ski? They like ski for like miles and then they randomly whip out a rifle, shoot some things, and then continue skiing.
I have never in my life seen that.
swear to God, that's a
you
thing.
are hallucinating.
I'm not.
I need to
It's
see
in
this.
it's in the Olympics,
What's it
guys.
called? Biathlon? No.
See, Jesse knows.
That's so weird.
It's a thing. Maybe you could snowboard and then just whip
Yeah.
out a rifle.
Yeah.
Pew pew on your way down the mountain. All right. Well,
But yeah, and so I've started training for
That's exciting.
the Titan Games. That actually hasn't been announced yet either. I just needed something.
Reborn exclusive.
Yeah. I needed something. I'm such a competitive person, and I've
Really?
actually been thinking
That's
about
shocking.
doing. Yeah, I know. I've been thinking about doing the tactical games for a while, and then I was just like,
Pulled the trigger.
I don't know. Like I'm kind of into guns, but I'm not good. And
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The fact that I'm not great at shooting guns.
Does that piss you off?
It does. And so like
get
now
mad when I
I've all
can't
of a
pick
sudden
up
become
something
obsessed
quickly.
with it.
Yeah.
And of course I have a really good teacher at home. Blue's been teaching me all the ins and outs of firearms and maneuvering and everything. So
That's awesome.
That-
Well, I
yeah.
think everyone will be
I've
be
been
on the
training.
lookout.
I've been training
Be
every
on the
day.
lookout, guys.
Yeah, so-
Hopefully you'll give us more updates,
I
more
will.
clues. So that just means you're gonna have to listen to the podcast
Listen
more
to
and
the
more.
podcast, and we'll talk
listen
about
for
it.
our hints.
Yes.
Our
And if you're
clues.
watching on Instagram, on my Instagram, you'll see like all the gun stuff, which I'm sure a lot of people are like, why is she slinging an AR around and like a weighted vest with like empty mags?
There's a purpose,
There is
people.
a purpose.
There's a
So,
purpose. So
well, my name's Ashley Horner. This is Lana Del Rey.
hey guys.
Thank you
Thanks for
for
having
joining us today on the podcast,
Reborn.
Reborn Podcast. Make
See you
sure
next
you
week.
download
Subscribe.
and tell your friends,
Tell your mom,
tell your dogs.
your aunt. I don't I froze there.
Tell
Tell
your friends,
everyone.
Tell everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah, give us some feedback if you have questions that you want us to answer. You can DM Lana Del Rey. You can DM me at the Reborn Pod, and we will get those answered for you on the
Stay
next
grinding.
Reborn podcast. Yeah.
Stay grinding, people.
Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.